Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Nationals live stream. I'm Craig Megan. I'm joined by my colleague Sophie Parsons.
Hello.
There's not a lack of news, is there, Sophie?
No, it's very, very busy today. It was very, very well. You were on the late shift last night, Craig. Busy night for you.
Yeah. I mean, very, very busy. Just from when 6 o'clock hit, when the Tory MP started voting in the secret ballot whether to oust Johnson. There was so much talk. Theresa May turned up in a ball gown. There were Tory MPs who were saying after and before whether they voted against or for him. Many very tight-lipped, particularly Scottish Tory MPs. 4 out of the 6 voted against the Prime Minister, but didn't make that public, apart from Douglas Ross, until after they had voted. Quite an exciting night and a sort of mixed result, I guess.
Yeah. So 211 Tory MPs voted in favour of Boris Johnson's leadership, meaning he won the vote of no confidence. But 148 Tory MPs voted against Boris Johnson, which is actually quite a lot. That's 2/5 of his MPs turned against him. So he might have won the vote of no confidence for now, and his line is very much let's get on with the job at hand. But that has been his line for the entirety of his premiership. Every time something has gone wrong, we've heard it's important to get on with the job at hand. It's somewhat of a catchphrase now. But I don't think that necessarily means he's safe. I think it's important to note that yesterday there was a really damning letter from Tory MP Jessie Norman, who had previously been somewhat of a Johnson stalwart. I guess he'd really always backed Johnson. And his letter was extremely damning. And it was interestingly not really that much about Partygate. It was sort of more about the failings of Boris Johnson's Tory government. So that perhaps suggests that some Tory MPs are getting sick of Boris Johnson's government as a whole, rather than it's not just the Partygate scandal that's led them to vote this way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one of the things. This isn't just about Partygate. This is about Boris Johnson's leadership, his leadership style, and his policies. And we saw him trying to sway Tory MPs before they voted in a speech that lasted, I think, about 27 minutes, in which he promised them certain things like tax cuts. But he needed 180 MPs to vote against for him to be ousted. He didn't get that, but he did get 148, which was higher than Theresa May, and she left, shortly after. So this isn't good for his leadership, and even some Tory MPs were saying that they were saying, we know he's going to win. All this is going to do is weaken him, and it does appear to have weakened him, because now we know that at least 148 Tory MPs want him gone.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same margin that Margaret Thatcher won her no confidence vote by, and then she was ousted days later. So I don't know that we'll see Boris Johnson ousted in the days to come, but people don't usually last very long after votes like this. So it could be the beginning of the end.
Yeah, definitely. And there was. I mean, our front page sort of led on the line that he's a lame duck prime minister after all these votes.
Yeah, that was Nicola Sturgeon's words after the results came out. UK stuck with lame duck PM. Yeah, seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the whole opposition just sort of, circling on the Tories. Keir Starmer said they were divided, now propping up Boris Johnson, and he even contrasted the Tories to Unity and Labour, which is a far cry from where it used to be. This used to be the sort of opposite situation, where Labour were the party who were in disarray, and now it seems like the Tories are the ones who are very, very divided at the moment.
Yeah, only worsened by Nadine Dorries yesterday, I think. As always, Nadine Dorries seems to I don't know, every appearance she makes, she does seem to make things slightly worse. She's been having some Twitter spats with Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt said he was going to vote against Boris Johnson's vote of no confidence, and Nadine was not impressed by this. But in her chain of tweets, sort of accidentally revealed that, or suggested that, the UK government was not prepared for the pandemic by saying that Jeremy Hunt's preparation had been, what was the quote?
I think she said it was wanting and inadequate.
That was it, yeah.
Quite a claim from a Tory minister to say to another, at the time, Tory minister, which a lot of people did say at the time, to be fair, which did not help. It's not a great look, especially with these accusations of division within the Tory party.
Yeah, and I mean, it was back in the day, but Nadine Dorries in 2012 tweeted about Jeremy Hunt and said he'd make a fantastic future leader. Seems that she's taken back that sentiment now. But we've actually got a video of her. So after this Twitter spat, she had an interview with Beth Rigby from Sky News, where it only seemed to sort of get worse and worse. There was quite a lot of Twitter backlash against it, with people suggesting this is how not to do an interview. So we'll show you the clip now.
And Nadine Dorries, just in terms of divided parties not winning elections, there's been a bit of agitation around, should I say, today about, you'll know about this, about some tweets between you and Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt saying it's time for change. You said if you've been leader, you'd have handed the keys of number 10 to Corbyn. You've been wrong on almost everything. You're wrong again now. That's what you said to Jeremy Hunt. That's kind of exacerbating this civil war, isn't it?
No,
what's your response to that?
Because Jeremy Hunt today has come out himself. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned this. Has come out today himself and said that it's time for change. I think what he means is it's time for him. And, I don't want to talk about individual personalities, but what I would say is that you can't say repeatedly that you're not going to challenge the Prime Minister while there's a war in Ukraine, and on the day Russia fires rockets into Kyiv, decide that it is time for a change of leader. I'm afraid that's just not acceptable. And I don't want to talk about personalities, but I'm afraid sometimes it just has to be said. There are individuals who do believe that who don't like Brexit, who are Remainers, who have been able to whip up a number of MPs in the party, and I'm afraid that's just not acceptable. The donors have spoken today, some key people in the Conservative Party that you will hear about and see over the next hours. A large number of MPs believe that they should be listening to their constituencies and the Prime Minister should remain in post. And, there's one other important point, Beth, if you just forgive me. The Prime Minister delivered Brexit against the odds. He personally drove the vaccine programme. He personally drove the testing programme. He personally drove the decision to lift all restrictions, COVID restrictions in the UK. We have the lowest unemployment rate since 1974. We will be in economic growth, the Bank of England have decided. We have one of the lowest inflation rates. He's got every big call right.
Nadine Dorries, just as an aside, actually, also you said to Jeremy Hunt, your pandemic preparation during 6 years as health secretary was found wanting and inadequate. Your duplicity right now is destabilising the party and country to serve your own personal ambition. I mean, you were a health minister. Is that an admission that the pandemic preparation was not good enough under the Conservative government?
So we're not going to rewrite what happened, though. We know the World Health Organization report and other reports which have come out since the pandemic. We know we did particularly well, but we did particularly well because of the way the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, handled the pandemic, and Matt Hancock, I might say, handled the pandemic and drove the UK through the pandemic to a point where, because of our vaccination programme, because of our testing programme, we were one of the few countries in the world, if not the only country, that could lift all COVID restrictions and open for business again. Boris Johnson got it right on the pandemic. He made the right calls.
So interesting. She said a few times, I don't want to talk about individual personalities. before going on to talk about individual personalities. Yeah, always interesting. Nadine Dorries interviews, always interesting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's not a great look to be calling your, Tory colleagues, accusing them of being very cynical and making this a personal ambition thing. Of course, what many people said about Boris Johnson before he became Prime Minister, and it wasn't a great look either when she said that the donors had spoken, and you do wonder why the Tories wheel Nadine Dorries out at this point.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure. It always makes news, I guess. Not
Yeah.
against them, I'd suggest.
I know, and with a potential reshuffle of cabinet coming up, Nadine doesn't get great press, but she is extremely loyal to Boris Johnson, and I think the sort of suggestions are that the MPs that are loyal will be rewarded. So that'll be interesting to see what comes out in the coming days about that.
Definitely, because it was interesting to see the makeup of Tory MPs who voted against Boris Johnson, who were employed by the government, who had some sort of ministerial role, compared to those who don't, who are just backbenchers. And it looked like there were far more backbenchers who voted against the Prime Minister than those who, directly benefit, because they would have to resign their government role if they were to come out against him, and the cabinet were quite unified in their, backing up the PM.
Yeah, exactly. I guess this kind of moves us on to elsewhere.
Yeah, well, it isn't just a UK thing, is it, or a Westminster thing? This affects Scotland as well, and it affects the Scottish Tory party, and it affects Douglas Ross in a big way, because after calls for Boris Johnson to resign, he wins the no confidence vote. Not all Scottish Tory MPs were happy with that. 4 out of the 6 voted for him to go, and now there are calls for Douglas Ross to go.
Yeah, among the calls are the National's biggest fans, the majority, who have campaigned against the paper's existence. But sliding over that, the majority is very pro-union group, and they're calling for Douglas Ross to resign. So interesting. Douglas Ross, I think, has a difficult few days ahead of him. We count that he's changed his position in 6 months. So in 2022 alone, he's changed his position on Boris Johnson's leadership 4 times. So, Stephen Kerr has come out and said Douglas Ross has been completely consistent. Don't know if changing your position 4 times would sort of traditionally equal consistency.
It's a tough spot for Douglas Ross, because does he now change his position again? Now that the PM's still in office, because it will be quite hard for him to go around doors and ask people to vote for him when he doesn't back the Prime Minister.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what he'll do, but
yeah, the SNP were calling for him to go as well. His position has been called completely inconsistent, and even a BBC journalist said that it was anything but consistent. So pretty hard for Douglas Ross. It was him and 3 other MPs who voted against Boris Johnson, and he put out a statement shortly before the no confidence vote to say why. He said he'd been listening to constituents and felt their anger, which, yeah, it's a tough spot for Douglas Ross.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think we've got an interesting few days coming up. After last night, I don't think it'll necessarily calm down to the extent that you might think. Quite a lot of political turmoil. Political turmoil is still very much in play, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Boris Johnson still has another inquiry on whether he misled Parliament, which is due. So things are in I mean, just because he won, things aren't great for Boris Johnson. They're also not particularly great for Douglas Ross, where 2 of his MPs voted, for the Prime Minister and 4 didn't. So it'll be quite tough for both of them at Prime Minister's questions and then First Minister's questions. Expect that to be brought up and expect that to be quite I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be quite a show.
Yeah, I think it'll be quite fiery. I'm sure the opposition will have a few lines up their sleeves. But I guess with that, Craig, we should probably wrap up and get back to the news.
Sounds good to me.
We've got a free trial still running at the moment. So if you subscribe today, you can get 30 free days of premium content. That's not just politics. We cover Scottish history, sport, culture, loads of great stuff. Craig is our resident culture correspondent. He does loads of great interviews. So sign up for a free trial today at our website. It's just below there. And yeah, have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.